Hey guys, welcome back to EKS Outdoors, and today we're talking swim baits. Colors, how to rig them, all the ways that I like to rig them. My favorite brands. Or today we're just really going to go over the classic styles of swim baits, like the Reaction Innovations Skinny Dipper. Well, it's an odd-shaped swim bait. They came up with this in 2003 or something, or 2002. Look at that. Got a weird head, really weird tail to it. I mean, the hollow belly comes up, splits off the tail, and it has a weird action where it kicks. It moves a little bit more water than, your average Kitech, but the tail keeps it a little bit more finesse. Okay, that probably doesn't make sense, but if you look at it in the water, the tail is kind of doing all its weird action, but the boot of it is barely going. But it's mainly doing this weird action where it just kind of goes like this in the water, where it goes kind of side to side, and the belly kind of rolls a little bit. And that's probably my number 3 swim bait that I throw. Number 1 is probably the Ripper style, like the Guggen, Saucy Swimmer, Kitech, Fat Impact, and then the Rage Swimmers. I mean, it don't matter as long as the swim bait is a Ripper style. Next up is probably the Zecco, probably the original Zecco. If I have the paddle tail, I'll throw it. Really good jig trailer. But let's talk about the colors. Now, colors are weird with the swim bait because swim baits mimics a wide variety of fish, like bass, crappie, bluegill, trout, shad, brim. Bluegill are brim, but you get the idea. You got your brim, your shad, your bluegill, your rainbow trout, your perch, your smaller bass. I mean, gobies. Swim baits mimic a wide variety of fish that bats love to feed on. Why? Well, it's kind of simple. Bigger fish like eating smaller fish. And if you throw a smaller swim bait, like in an Alabama rig, which I got rigged up right here for Dale Hollow, obviously I'm going to have to do some modifications to it, but I think this right here would really work well at Dale Hollow. Obviously, I'm going to make it legal for both Tennessee and Kentucky by somehow removing, I haven't figured out which the jig heads I'm going to remove, but I'm going to remove, the hooks out of them and make dummies. But, you got classic shad patterns in the Alabama rig. Okay, I'm hooking myself with that. Ow. Next way I like to rig them, is, well, let's skip the colors because there's too many. Obviously, here's real quick. Black and blue, pearls, like shad colors, your pearls mimic your shad, then probably green pumpkin, and then baby bass. Those are probably about the 4 colors I think you'd probably need to throw. And then anything that you see your bass feeding on, like this looks like a what is it called? I'm trying to find the color. Magic shad, but to me it looks like a baby bass. But anything that your bass are feeding on, throw it. Your brim colors work well. Try crappie and shad colors, and then obviously try a goby color. Now let's talk about a few more rigging. Obviously, the Alabama rig is probably the number 1 way to rig a swim bait. Next up is probably the weightless Texas rig. You can rig it weedless, you can expose the hook, you can have it completely, through the bait on top, and it sits on top of the groove. Works very well in shallow water. Next is probably the weighted Texas rig, which is a screw lock. Weight is down here on the shank of the hook, and then you just Texas rig the swim bait. Then you got your classic. Now this is what I like to think of a classic style of a swim bait, or classic way to rig them is on a jig head, like a swim bait jig head, or the underspin. Now I like to swim mine kind of fast. This is a 7-to-1 gear ratio. It's kind of your medium gear ratio, but I like a fast moving shad presentation. It's set in the wintertime. That's when I go to a 5 or a 6-to-3 or a 6-to-1. Or 5 to, whatever slower, I like doing that. Sometimes I might hook it to a Ned rig and then fish it back that way. So I like fishing them with the underspin, regular, your swim bait jig head. But the most effective, I honestly think, is a finesse style. You take one of, where did I put that Alabama rig? Okay, here it is. You take one of these small Kitex or small whatever you're using and hook it up on a Ned rig style, something like this. Hook it up that way. And I'm telling you, hop it along a grass bed. You will have good luck. I mean, serious. We were using this at Del Hollow. We were catching 3 to 5 pound smallmouth and largemouth. anywhere from 17 to about 20 inches, about that thick. Really, really healthy fish. In fact, my brother caught a 18-inch Kentucky spotted bass that weighed about 3 or 4 pounds. It was a monster. But, you got the that little tiny finesse bait. You're hopping it along. It looks like a wounded shad or a wounded brim, whatever color you're using. Then next up is probably, I like to throw them on the drop shots. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. It looks completely stupid. I'm going to tell you right now. It looks stupid, but it is effective. We were fishing at a lake. I was using a shad color. I threw it out there. I'm jigging along, okay. After you jig it along a little bit, you might reel it back. But that's what's good about the swim bait. Usually when you're using a drop shot, you're using it as a squirrel tail, so it's doing this, or you're hopping it along so it has a little wiggle to it. But the swim bait, you reel it in, guess what it's doing? It's swimming back. And when it's swimming back, it just looks like any other bait fish, like a minnow, or a shad, or a bluegill. See, the bats see that, and they're like, oh, free food. They chase after it, and they'll hit it. And I've caught some bass that way. I don't know what it is. In the wintertime, I won't use a swim bait on a drop shot, but drop shot's a good way to fish a swim bait. Next up is probably spinner baits, your chatter baits, and then your, obviously, swim jigs. Now, they're all reaction style lures. They all kind of have to have some type of kick. Now, swim baits work well on all of them. Chatter baits, not so much, but it is effective. You got to use the Zecco. The Zecco. But that's probably going to be it for this video. I know it's short. Got a lot of information. I'm forgetting one. Super sorry. But one style that I did forget is your glide baits and your jointed swim baits. This is a Mike Bouchard bull shad. Now, it looks exactly like a shad. I mean, you throw this in the water, it's slow sinking, you got your glide baits, but look, when you swim through the water, it looks like a natural fish's movement, and Honestly, I think you would get hit more with this. We haven't thrown it. I haven't thrown this. My dad hasn't thrown it yet, but it's something we're going to try. Obviously, you got your glide bait, more winter, but I think that be it for this video. And see y'all later.